All right, Dennis Young here, Primitive Substance YouTube channel, and another great special guest, Patrick Grant from New York City, composer, all different types of music, and what a career. So, Patrick, thank you for doing this.
Thank you, Dennis, for showing your interest.
Of course, I mean, I really want to talk to a lot of creative people, and you're one of them.
Well, I see you do. You have like everyone I know in many circles is on your site. So you talk to a lot of really good musicians.
Yes, that's what I try. So let's talk about your early days in New York, or how you got interested in coming to New York to do music.
Sure. Well, I was when I was growing up, I was interested in classical music, and I started playing in rock bands and original rock bands. Like, what do you guys play? Oh, we play original music. Like, oh man, because they I think they knew that'd be like low on the drink sales that night. But we did had some pretty good success there. And then I moved out here because I wanted to get back to my classical roots, but at the same time, uh, on the Lower East Side, it was still happening in
Yes, it
the
was.
late 80s. Yeah. And a lot of I drove like a radio car service around for like, 9 months or something like that. And during that time, I met a lot of artists who temped that
Okay.
night doing secretarial work. So before you know it, I became a composer on East 4th Street.
Oh,
And there was a need for composers, and I like music that tells a story. So that's why I was happy to combine it with theater, but not in a
hmm.
musical theater way like Music Man or Hello Dolly. But my roots are more rooted in the surrealists like Antonin Artaud, where he believed, a theater uh, of all arts combined at the same time.
Hmm.
I mean, even Wagner has his Gesamtkunstwerk, but
Right.
I like that surrealist sensibility because you can go anywhere the mind would want to go then in terms of a story. So that was
Well,
and they needed music all the time. Everyone needed music, so it was a fun place to be the composer, which they sometimes call like you feel like the chaplain on the ship somehow, in
well,
a
you had
theater
so many great people down there at that time. Philip Glass, Reese
company.
Chatham, all types of, and then you worked with John Cage, right? Is that you did some
Yes.
work with him?
I well, I got when my first real job in New York City was working for the classical music publisher C.F. Peters. It was a
Okay.
German company that split it into three directions after World
Hmm.
War II, but we were the New York division, and their ASCAP division took on John Cage in the
Okay.
late 50s. So we published all of his music there. And
Hmm.
so when I started going back and forth touring with a lot of theater companies,
Right.
um, it was a living theater who actually premiered a lot of John Cage's pieces back in the day. So I was just following
Hmm.
like the history trail while I was
That's
here.
something.
But when I came back, then I started working within the circle of people that helped John Cage because back then he had all his chance operations
Okay.
and fantastic assistant and composer in his own right, Andrew Culver, would write these MS-DOS programs for him,
Oh my
and
gosh.
with
Wow.
monitors with like the green,
That's
dot
pretty
matrix.
neat.
But yeah, but then we would get the printouts from that and do a lot of his time bracket pieces, like for a whole orchestra, like okay, oboe two, it'd be like between 43 seconds and 115, play this note. And
Hmm.
then I'd have different places. So everybody would play within their brackets. They all had little stopwatches and they would just have to listen like when was the right time within that window to play the note. But we were the boss I was like who had that going. He was one of the first people to use Finale.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Rest in peace, Finale.
Oh, that's something.
Yeah. So we would get those dot matrix printouts, and then we would turn that into actual printed music for orchestras to play. And it involved having some direct contact with John myself, and he and Merce
Hmm.
Cunningham had a very famous loft on Sixth Avenue and 18th Street. And you'd
Boy.
go over there and Don would have to sign it, say everything looked okay. And he'd always sign his name 2 or 3 times. He'd like to sign it
Oh, okay.
superimposed.
Huh.
But he also had like plants all over the place.
Hmm.
And he always had a pyramid of bottles of Guinness.
Oh, that's
Like,
funny.
so we could always offer people Guinness because he had a real connection with Irish culture through
That's
James Joyce.
something.
Yeah, all these little things. But anyways, but that's why I moved here, so I
Yeah,
could have these kinds of experiences and to work with some folks that not so much these days would really trust a young artist like Judith
yeah,
Malina from Living Theater or when I Robert Wilson. They would just say, follow your
yeah.
heart,
That's a
make something that makes sense. And sometimes I find like the bigger the artist, the more secure they are with letting the young folks say, see what you come up with.
that was such a vibrant period for New York. You had art happening. You had post punk. You had rap even starting to happen a little later. So that whole
And the
area,
last days of disco, those three
right?
worlds.
Exactly.
And you could bounce around from those three worlds and
Yep.
be welcome everywhere.
Yep, that's what amazing. And then, you had the whole minimalist movement there in New York that was really happening at that period. So you got there at the right time.
Well, when I came here before the internet, everything was a little bit more um, geographically, important in that I would. I've come from Detroit. I sort of have a Devo post-punk aesthetic coming from the Midwest, but it's like, oh, we can groove, but in 7/8,
Yeah.
and 5 and whatever we want to do. But one of the things I do is a show called One by Willie it's a Willie Nelson podcast.
Oh, I love Willie.
It's sixth season, and the guy who runs, he's out of Austin, Texas. Name is John Spong, and he's just like got the biggest heart in the world. And he always has some notable figure come on and talk about one song by Willie
Oh,
Nelson,
that's really
and,
neat.
and all the little stories that go along.
Right.
So this season I did John Mellencamp, Larry Gatlin,
Boy, you got
and
some heavyweights there.
yeah, and I'll tell
Wow.
you, I mean, anybody that can make a living at making music, the stories are great.
Yeah. Now, do you have a lot of subscribers to this channel? Is it pretty successful as far as,
I don't know, maybe I don't know. They could always have more, but I guess
yeah,
maybe 10,000 a month.
that's not bad. That's still good.
But the other shows we do for PRX, like How to Be a Better Human stuff, that's about, that's in the six figures every month.
Wow. So that's
Yeah.
some good extra income there, right?
Yeah, but a lot of it is we get the audio for the podcast and or we
You
get the
can't beat
podcast
that.
and we edit it down. And when we do, we make everybody sound great. So Dennis, I hope you make me sound great, man.
It does. Now, did you ever get to meet Willie Nelson through all
No,
this?
not at all. No, I just been working on this podcast for the
Okay.
last couple of weeks, but we get all the raw audio of but Willie listens to it, but I liked the one with John Mellencamp,
Oh, I
because
imagine he's pretty raw. I mean, he doesn't mess
and when
around.
he talks, there's huge pauses in what
Oh,
he says. And so we're always removing that to make it a little
oh,
bit like this. And John Spong, he says, like, well, you mean did Mellencamp come off as sort of a dick during that interview? And I said, no, more like a son of a bitch. And he's like, okay, that's much better, much better.
oh, that's great.
But what great stories, though. But
Oh, I
anyways,
imagine you're very
so
lucky to get somebody like that to come on your show.
that's their show. I'm just happy to be producing episodes for the work.
Okay.
But anyways, but I like the stories in music and appreciate the wonderful world of podcasting.
So I want to
Yeah.
talk about Bali a little bit
Sure.
because I have a short story to tell you before I hear about this. We played at a club called the Underground back in the
Hmm.
early 80s, and we opened the show before we even played with the monkey chant.
Okay.
Now
Sure.
that was really pretty wild, but it was kind of a jinx because the second song, our bass player broke a string, and
Oh,
then we had to wait. He didn't have an extra string, so luckily at that time stores were open at night, music stores. So the show was delayed, but I just wanted to, before you start Bali, I just thought I'd
well,
mention that.
the spirit of Hanuman was there to teach you from monkeying
That's
around.
it. So let's hear about Bali a little bit, how you got interested in gamelan and that era.
A lot of it comes from my love of Bach and part writing and a lot of the projects I create, it's all about ensemble music more than soloists.
Okay.
But because of that, I fell in love with those Wendy Carlos recordings I mean, I ate them up like crazy when I was like, 13 and 14. And then from there's a lot of great articles in Keyboard Magazine at the time, and one of the albums was Beauty in the Beast about the alternative tunings.
Hmm.
And they had a piece in there called Poem for Bali, which is Wendy's, idea of a gamelan. But then I started listening to real gamelan at my library, and I took it
Right.
as an ethno music elective, and I just loved it, And then
Hmm.
I met somebody. And we said, well, let's go to Bali together. So we did, because she'd
Oh,
been there before
wow.
a number of times. She'd been there going there since the 70s, when it was just like, why, where is that? But and then when I went there, um I love the place of music and its culture. It hasn't, it's not a separate thing. You have to, every village has its gamelan. As we were going through
Hmm.
to our hotel after getting picked up in a Jeep. Everywhere you went, you had just the smell of spices, and you could always
Oh,
hear
that must have been
gamelan in the
amazing.
distance somewhere. And I was like, oh man, I just love that. And it's an intricate part writing, and not to mention, of course, after my interest in Balinese music actually presaged Wendy Carlos because of King Crimson Discipline, because then they started
Hmm.
talking about
Oh, that's a great
gamelan.
record,
That's not the
right?
first time I looked up gamelan, and I heard it at my library. So then when Wendy thought it was cool, that's when I really thought it was cool. So since I've come back, I started like tuning my synthesizer. I used to be a synthesizer guy,
Oh, how
totally.
about? Oh, I didn't know that.
I know everybody thinks I'm this guitar guy now. I just did that later in life because I used to
Hmm.
play in bands and stuff. But I'll tell you, you will become a better musician if you work within the circles of Robert Fripp.
Oh,
I'll
well,
tell
that's what I want to lead to, Mr.
you.
Robert
Okay.
Fripp, and how you got in the
Well,
orchestra of crafty guitars. How did that happen?
well, just a couple steps before that. So after being to
Go ahead.
Bali, I came back here and I found out that, Bali had a big place in the arts, and working for the same publisher as Cage, we also published a lot of the gamelan works that Lou Harrison wrote. And you really start getting into the weeds here, like Lou Harrison, like the Javanese style gamelan, which is sort of, the classical music of gamelan. Whereas I fell in love with the Balinese style, which Balinese styles, as we know it, is really came into being in the 1920s.
Oh, I didn't
So
know
in the
that.
same way
Hmm.
that classical musicians look down upon jazz, that's the way the Javanese looked down upon the Balinese style, because it was too syncopated, it was too
Hmm.
energetic. It wasn't about, lofty ideas. It was more community and dance oriented.
Hmm.
And they also melted down all of the Javanese gamelans and then recast them to be played for speed. Sort of like, the Balinese turned the Javanese gamelans into muscle cars.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so
Wow.
so I thought that was interesting too. So a lot of that music, I had an ensemble of three keyboardists, which people say, oh, are you like trying to be like the Philip Glass ensemble? And I said, you could say that, but I was more influenced by one of Phil's schoolmates, Peter Schickele, because when I was like 12,
Oh, wow.
I saw they did this an opera and one unnatural act called Hansel and Gretel, Ted and Alice, and they
Hmm.
had a piano, a calliope, and a harpsichord, and it was such a great sound,
Hmm. Oh,
the three
imagine.
keyboards together. But because of my love of Balinese tuning, they don't use the Western scales. They play all the pitches in between.
Hmm.
If you can imagine an octave divided up into seven different sized intervals, or five different
Hmm.
sized intervals, that's the scale. That's the kind of tuning they had in Bali, and they'd fight over it too. Like different villages, like our tuning is awesome, yours sucks, and and they would have music offs, but I mean, we all benefit from that. So that was a good kind of a fight. So when I came back in, I started creating a lot of music for a combination of Western instruments and keyboards that were in those tunings, or
Right.
not in those tunings. But I like the idea of the interlocking parts, hocketing, as it is. If you know, a lot of musicians don't know that word. Comes
Right.
from
Right.
the Latin root for hiccup, but it means breaking up a melody amongst two different, or more different performers. The most elegant definition I heard of a hocket was a monophonic attempt at polyphony. So
Wow. That's
yeah,
something.
get a single melody and busting
Yeah.
it up. So that was my world, and creating a lot of that classical music and music for dance that got me into working with Robert Wilson, who has also a strong Balinese,
Mm,
because this Antonin Artaud, one of his earliest essays was Artaud, was about the Balinese theater. It was a
okay.
theater with less words, and it was just all about sound and movement and image. And that you got me
Mm,
as a musician there, because I like words, but less of them, please, because I
right.
think everything else, all the other arts can speak better, that way. And so then when I had this opportunity with this organization called it's in Make Music New York, I did some co-produced some performances of Terry Riley's In C a
Oh,
number
I
of times.
love that piece.
Yeah, yeah, with Terry's cooperation on one of them even. But he was they asked me to, like, well, we have a winter one coming up. What do you want to do? So I created this a group for mobile electric guitars.
Oh,
And
okay.
because I thought we're always tethered to but I did the research, what kind of amps, and it attracted a lot of attention. And the name of the group is Tilted Axes, because this was for the first Make Music Winter. So it took place on the solstice, because the seasons are
Oh,
determined by the
okay.
tilted axis of the earth. But of course, we know an axe is also a guitar.
Right, right.
So when anybody spells it with an I, I'm like, oh no, you don't get it. It's like we're no Beatles, but it's like Beatles with an A. There's a thing there. But
Yeah,
anyways,
that's it.
but that for me was my after playing with other new music gamelans in New York City, and there was a few here, the
Mm.
Rockland gamelan ensemble. Then they also have Gamelan Son of Lion, gave me the opportunity to work with new music gamelans here who came out
I
of the
think I heard of
Harrison
them,
tradition.
Son of Lion. There was
Oh
a
yeah,
guy,
they've been around for 30 years or more, since the
yeah.
70s. Yeah. Yeah, much longer than that. But Philip Corner, Daniel Good, Barbara Benari,
I know Daniel Good. I took a course in college with him.
he taught at Rutgers, right?
Yes, yes, sound through
Yes.
tape.
Yes, we used to rehearse it as his loft, because it was
Oh,
full of
that's
gamelan
something.
stuff.
It was a
Yeah.
great course. All we did was splice tape for credit, you know? It was great.
Tape? What's
That's
that?
it. That's right.
I'm teaching my students, then they were born like, way after 9/11, so they don't know what the heck I'm
That's
talking
true.
about.
You're right.
So when I had an opportunity to do something with electric guitars, for me that was going to be my gamelan. Like, okay, this is an instrument from my culture,
Right.
but I want to be an ensemble music. So a lot of our music was informed by not just Balinese structures, but structures that are not coming out of the blues tradition.
Okay.
So I always say, and if we do a blues, it's usually a blues that's commenting on the blues somehow.
Oh, okay.
If
Right.
you're a Picasso and you had a blues solo and you only had 27 notes, what 27 notes would you pick? Something like that. Weird. So sometimes that project isn't just guitar music, I say, but it's
Mm,
guitar music that's about guitar music. So I try to elevate it and make it well, it is a conceptual kind of piece too. And if you keep that in
mm,
mind, there's great humor, but also great possibility for innovation too. Because a
mm,
lot of guys like, well, if you want to bend the string and play blues, there's plenty of opportunities for that. There's an opportunity for us to do something different. So I use a lot of the interlocking parts. I've been to
mm.
Bali to study 3 times,
Oh, okay.
and for extended periods, like months at a time. So I really, got a chance to get it under my skin. And when I first went there, I don't know what this is going to air, but we have a full moon coming up
Okay.
tonight. And I do remember the first time I went there, I'm like, oh, I'm going to meet all these Balinese musicians and find out what it's like, their experience. And then and every full moon, they usually have a full night ceremony where they have like shadow puppets and they stay up all night and
Oh,
everything for full
wow.
moon. And so I went there, and like the musicians were taking a break, and I want to see what they're up to. And they're just standing around. They're just like, smoking clove cigarettes and doing shots. And I'm like,
Oh,
oh,
yeah.
okay. Musicians are the same anywhere you go.
That's funny.
Yeah, that was funny. But I that's one of I always say I'm a really bad tourist, but everywhere I go, I like to meet the musical community there and just say, teach me something, let's make some music.
Did you record any of this music on
Yes.
records?
Oh, not on record, but I record a lot of the music while I was there, and a lot on videotape of them playing.
Okay.
And I've had permission to sample an entire gamelan while I was there, which
Wow.
is
That's
damn near
interesting. Mm,
impossible because everything's,
yeah.
outside. It
Right.
might be underneath
Yeah.
a tent thing. But a lot of those instruments, they have such a long sustain and release at the end. So when you're making a sample and you're out in the middle of everywhere, you hit the note ding and it goes on forever. Then right before it gets to the end, you're like, "Room, room." And, oh man, it's always like a dog or a chicken or something. Yes, but I sampled the instruments there, and I've used them in some of my recordings. But I think that the most sincere way is it through my guitar project Tilted Axis because it's all interlocking parts. It reminds me of my work playing the gamelan here, and
Yeah.
there'd be like, we have a piece in the new music gamelan. We have a piece called like 45s or something, where like there'd be
Mm.
nine people in a circle, and every five notes, somebody would play this pattern, and it was all about a lot of number play like that. So somebody said after we first did the Tilted Axis project, they said, you should you should join one of the Robert Fripp, guitar events. I'm like, no,
Right.
no, what? Why do you want me? Because I had just came back to guitar after not being seriously. But as a composer, though, my advantage is like you can write something really bizarre and I can figure out how to play it because I read music really well. So,
Oh, okay. I was going to ask you about that.
oh yeah, yeah, no, I'm a trained composer, and that's why believe me before the guitar. So yeah, so a lot of the music's written out. Well, we'll get to that in a second, but
Sure.
yeah, yeah. So I joined the guitar. So it's coming up on 14, 13, 12, 13 years. Yeah, 13 years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So and then Robert's been a big supporter of Tilted Axis, and when I got there, I realized, oh, they're doing a lot of the same stuff
Mm.
because my only exposure to Robert Fripp was really through Eno and David Bowie, and the Discipline era King Crimson growing up.
Oh, okay.
And part of that was because I was a little too old to really grow up with the very early King Crimson. And at that point, the people who liked King Crimson were like just the biggest stoners at my high school. So I'll listen to something else. So I was probably more affected by the people who liked it than the actual music. Because now as I got older, I listened to it. I was like, oh wow, there's a lot of good stuff there.
Yeah.
And I always yeah. So I'm happy to have met Robert, and he's been a big supporter because there's definitely the guitar craft way of doing things,
Hmm.
but that can also inform a lot of other projects that people do too. So.
That's really interesting how that interlocks, with all those guitars together. I mean, you
Mhm.
really have to be disciplined to do that.
Yes, I'll send you a link. I'm actually on an at a distance guitar circle course right now.
Oh, you are?
We're
Okay.
halfway through it. Yeah, so it's always good to stay in contact because I have my other projects coming up, and the one of the great things I got about I'm getting from the Guitar Circle Guitar Craft is just to concentrate and focus on the musician inside, how to pay attention better, and how to pay attention to different things happening at the same time better,
Right.
which you really can't, but you know how to ricochet around with intention.
Now, do you use a lot of effects with this, with your playing? I mean, is it a lot of pedals or
Mm.
what kind of pedals do you use?
When I'm by myself, I will put together any kind of pedals I want or need or electronics. Yes, no problem. But when it comes to tilted axes, we have these nice little mini Vox amps that they don't make anymore, but I have a whole
Hmm.
bunch and we refurb them. But it sounds like a Vox, it's got,
Okay.
got like software modeling on it. But when we have like 15 people playing guitar, and there's always that guy who has to like turn on his chorus or his
Right.
distortion, I say, don't. Um, because they're not hearing the overall sound. Because if you want chorus on a note, you say, "Hey, everybody, hit your open D string." Because and that's the sound. No one's gonna be perfectly in tune. That's your chorus sound. You get
Okay.
15 people try to play in sync. That right there is a huge sound, and at different layers of volume too, because the three stages of any acoustic life cycle, boom,
Yeah.
is direct sound, then the early reflection,
Right.
and then the reverb uh,
Oh,
knocking
okay.
some.
It's
and
pretty
the
neat.
reverb. So I always feel that when you have that many people playing together, it becomes its own effect because the first guitar you hear will be the direct sound, the few others around it, the reflective,
Right.
and it will and it will determine, what's the best way to write for a group like this to have them sound good, you
Well, when
know.
you're having all those guitars playing, I assume you have its own effects right there. I mean, with everything
That is.
vibrating and frequencies going all over, and plus if you're playing certain notes, it really expands.
Yes. So that's the thing is that when you have that many guitarists, I like using I'm the guy who uses the Fender Jaguars because the amps we're
Oh,
using
okay.
they just sound better with single coil guitars.
Hmm,
If you're playing a Les Paul with humbucker pickups, it sounds great if you're in a power trio, but with a lot of other guitars around you, it can make it sound kind of muddy.
right.
So and these are things that they didn't tell you when you came up with the project. But like as we have moved forward, we just really realized what we do to sound best, quickly. So lots of trial and error in our uh, the 15th season now coming up. Yeah.
So when is your next show with Tilted Axes? You're going to play in New York again in the near future?
Yes. Well, the blessing and the curse is with Tilted Axes is that because we're self-contained and people love us for that because we just, as long as we have a place to leave our cases, if it's not in a car or if it's not in a lockup, whatever, we require nothing, no PA system because we have everything right there. We just show
Right,
up.
right.
So, so as a result, the blessing and the curse is people will often hire us at the last minute for really great things. So sometimes it's hard to say in advance what we're doing, but when we do something, it's always like a really great thing.
Hmm,
And then the curse is that I think some people still don't know what the project is, and
hmm.
and and I'm like, well, I tried to foresee that by putting that right in the title. That's why it's always Tilted Axes,
Yeah.
music for mobile electric guitars. Like, little chin wag there. Like,
Yeah.
where's the flutes? No, that's right in there in the title. So, then they don't know what we do, but we've been incorporating a lot of movement these days, working with choreographer Christopher Caines.
Okay.
And a lot of this comes from, um,
Hmm,
like medieval and Renaissance stuff. So, you know, uh, when you have groups where sometimes a lot of guitarists really don't know how to move well on stage,
yeah.
So,
Okay.
but as we move forward, didn't want to scare them away. Like there's no dance element, but there is movement because all of a sudden to go from having zero plan to having a plan just makes for a better looking show.
Hmm,
So we tell everybody, oh, don't worry, it's no one's on point. It's not Swan Lake or anything like that. And we just want people to move like themselves. But there's a plan, and a lot of it's practically informed by the piece of music we're playing, like who has to be in the mix. So you come up with
hmm,
formations where if you're the audience, the soloists will be up front, middle level, and then the backing level, and then maybe there'll be a switch over or something at a significant piece in the thing, but and try to avoid, looking corny or anything, but it's interesting geometry, and you can hear it affect the sound. So that's been part of our shows increasingly. So um, our we have two big things we have coming up. The big thing is going to perform at the Concert of Colors in July in Detroit.
okay.
That festival's been going on for over 30 years now, and it's their big. It's where you know, well, look at all the music that's come out of Detroit. There's
Oh, I
Motown,
know.
and then there's jazz, then there's post-punk and Jack
Yeah,
White
everything.
and
Yep.
and yeah, and techno, and you name it. So everything comes together there.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
and we're doing it at the Detroit Institute of Arts. And for me, it means a lot because it's like returning to my hometown, and we have all these. But I'm bringing some of our musicians from here to go there too to help me put it together. And um, and then
When is that going to happen? What's the date on that?
that's July. That's going to be the
Oh,
whole
you said right, July. Okay.
yeah the whole week leading up the 19th and 20th for us.
Okay.
And
So,
there's a Detroit producer Don Was who puts a lot of things
oh
together
yeah,
there
I've heard
too.
of him.
but we perform, yeah, we perform, anywhere though. We go inside museums, and while we're there, so that's a good time. Our biggest thing this year is there's a real um for years, I guess it's what I called it. It's like an incubator theater space. A lot of things from East Village really were born in a place called Theater for the New City. That's on First Avenue
Okay.
and 10th Street. And we were a hit there last year performing at the Lower East Side Festival of the Arts because I knew that was the audience that
Hmm.
would really get us. And so we're invited to play back there again this Memorial Day weekend for the Lower East Side Festival of the Arts. And but we're also gearing up towards in late September, early October, doing a multi-week run there of a piece we're creating just for inside a theater.
Oh, that's
But the
pretty
big
neat.
theater gives us plenty of room to move
Yeah.
around though too. So um, even though we were doing it before David Byrne and his show, but
Yeah.
the significant difference is like we actually wear our own amps.
That's
So when we move
amazing. That
around,
is really neat.
we're moving the speakers around. We surround the audience sometimes, and so it's not just music you listen to, but it's also music you can feel move around spatially. So that's a lot of fun.
Now, I want to ask you about Strange Music Day.
Sure,
Is that still going on?
it sure is.
That is great. Great idea.
I mean, I'm at this age where I'm running like, well, what will be my legacy? But definitely one of them will be International Strange Music Day. I had a lot of interest in because of gamelan. Gamelan is in a way a sonic fractal, where
Hmm.
it's self-similar and self-described. If you know like one measure of gamelan music, the fast part, you can extrapolate what all the slower parts are because
Right. Yeah.
it's all like a fractal in that sense. So the James Gleick book was really popular, Chaos at the time, and
Hmm.
I was interested in strange attractors, and also the word strange had the name Grant in there, sort of. And I'm like, okay, but so I started doing a lot of fractal music that was related to gamelan and all that. So when I had an opportunity to create my company, my girlfriend at the time, her dad gave me a loan to start, to incorporate, and I picked the name Strange Music. And I had that name for a couple of years. Then I found out there was a strange music also begun by a rap guy in
Oh,
Kansas
okay.
City, Missouri. And I tried to give him a cease and desist because I had the name trademarked, but it turned into a big FU. But I do have my name immortalized in some of his rap lyrics, about
Oh, I like that. Now,
putting a
now,
cap in my ass or some shit like that. So I figure like, oh, there's my street cred right there. But but I started these strange music concerts and I like the idea of something that was strange. 'Cause a lot of the music that I liked the most in my life, I might have been repelled at by first, or like, whoa, what is that? Or then like 2 weeks later, I'm trying to get everyone to listen to it. I was like that because it challenges me. But the idea of something that's strange or unusual worked well for me in terms of playing a lot of putting on some concerts, that were uncategorizable. So we did something right after 9/11, Strange Music Series for a number of years. And and then I thought, okay, well, there's nothing's really happening, in August. So I just said International Strange Music Day. I did it as a goof
hmm.
way back on when the internet was young. And some people took it seriously. Then I noticed that people were starting to have like, because nothing, a lot of summer schools were having kids make instruments.
Okay.
Old
Hmm.
folks' homes were, playing like, wacky tunes at
Hmm.
radio stations. Like this is the Morning Zoo, Austin, Texas. Did you know today is International Strange Music Day? And they'd always
That
play
is
something
great.
like, they're coming to take me away, haha, or something stupid like that.
Yeah.
But it really caught on. So like every year it's like then when I started seeing it pop up around the world, I said, well, I guess it's International Strange Music Day. But I picked August 24th because it was also the birth date of Philippe Braunschweig, the father of my girlfriend, who helped me get that start. So
Oh, that's great. That's great. Now, is
yeah,
this
so,
a,
so even though I'm no longer with her, and I think he flew away a long time ago, but I thought that, but I'm always happy to say that he believed in me.
now, is this a one day show where you have a whole bunch of artists play, or
You
is it
can
just,
it started out with like a graphic. I like sort of like that punky style of cut and paste and have like the black lines over the eyes, like it's a
Yeah.
crime magazine or something. But I just said International Strange Music Day. Listen to some music you've never heard before just for the hell of it. That was the idea. Just listen to something, just stretch your ears,
Hmm.
and that's only, and to listen without prejudice, so because I'm discovering there's some really great Willie Nelson songs I didn't know
I can
about.
imagine. Well, Willie, he's had quite a
And
career.
this one that was, I forget, the '70s guy did it, like Poke Salad Annie. It's a pretty
Right.
famous song, but it's a country song, but it is dirty. The suggestive imagery in there is like, how did this get on the radio back in the day,
Yeah.
Uh,
Now
but
with
yeah,
the internet.
yeah. So there's good music everywhere.
Oh, yeah. So now your label, you put out a number of releases with that strange music. You have
Yes,
a
originally was Strange Music, and I still have the trademark. I dissolved the company last year because I'm getting um I guess more it makes more sense to sort of say that was that period after 25 years, and now everything's Peppergreen Media because
right, right.
I'm working closely with ASCAP, and that includes a lot of other things. But that's how we just structure our taxes and all that kind of stuff. Not that interesting, but on the Strange Music label, I put out the first one was with gamelan music that was recorded at Philip Glass's studio,
Hmm.
and that became sort of a hit on a radio show we have here called New Sounds. So that's
Oh,
the
oh
yeah
yeah, I know
there,
that. John Schaefer was on that.
yeah, Fields of Maze was the hit off that album. It's gotten used for a lot of stuff and in TV commercials, and that was just music
Hmm.
for the instruments from Gamelan Son of Lion and my keyboards that I tuned to their gamelan tuning.
Oh, very neat. So
Yeah, yeah.
do they still use that at all? Is that still being used, that song, for different
It
things?
pops up all over the place. It shows up somewhere, for something, but and it's always John Schaefer always digs it up whenever he has to do some kind of a, show of repeats or something.
Is he still have his show? I don't even listen to him anymore. I hate to say it, but
Barely. He had a couple of weeks ago, they just said that because of the cuts, because of what's happening to the arts now,
right.
is that what's the term they like to use, that they're going to sunset the program
Oh man, that's
unless they find a major donor. And then John Schaefer says, like, but all you fans out there, no, we're not going to do a fund drive. It's not your kind of money we need. We need somebody like, you know, um, the Carnegie Mellon Foundation or something if we make it
right. Somebody
happen.
with big mega bucks
But
to
if
say,
not, they've had a 38-year run, and he's done a lot
oh,
of
it's the great music
great
on that
stuff.
show.
Yeah,
I used to listen to it a lot. I mean, it really was always very good.
especially before the internet. When I first moved here in the '80s, that I heard my first Colin Nancaro. Do you know him?
No, I don't know him.
He was a real maverick American composer who ended up moving to Mexico, and his medium was uh, player pianos. So he would punch
Hmm.
rolls of music that'd be impossible for a human to play. And a lot of time signature stuff, like 11 against 13 or this over this, and because you can do that by punching it out. And so
Yeah.
I heard some of that stuff on John Schaefer, Alvin Lucier. I Am Sitting in a Room was the first time I heard it there. But knowing that that's the kind of music that really planted the seeds for a lot of prog and stuff that comes
Yeah,
along
yeah.
later,
Would never think about that like that, right?
Yeah, I mean,
So
look at a lot of the Phil Glass, Steve Reich stuff that we see reflected 15 years later, and all like those arpeggiated synthesizer burblings that became common, but all kinds of things like that. Yeah, it's all connected, Dennis. What can I
yes, it
say?
is. Now, where can we find your music these days? Is it on mostly digital? Is that
I've been staying away. I know there's no way of avoiding Spotify, but ethically, I feel really bad about that. So I don't care about that so much, but it's all my Bandcamp page.
I'll make sure
But
to
the good
mention
news
that.
is there's a load of new music coming out this year that
Okay.
we've been working on really hard. Me and producer Jeremy Ness. I met him he comes up through the Three of a Perfect Pair camp that's run by Tony
Oh,
Levin,
okay.
Pat Mastelato, and
Oh, yeah, I've heard of Pat.
and
Tony
Andrew Bird,
Levin
yes.
involved too? Tony Levin?
Yeah, well, if I come from the Fripp camp, yeah, the Jeremy, the guy producing the upcoming tracks with, comes from that camp. But yeah, but it's been wonderful. So we do have too much music that's been recorded that just hasn't been finalized because we always have
Okay.
the next thing to do. And I said, I need some help, Jeremy. Let's get this stuff out. But we have about 30 tracks,
Wow. That's a
and
lot.
I'd say that only five of them suck. And but it just means there's gonna be some good stuff in there. So that's what we're looking forward to do too. So that's why we're waiting for a possibility of we've been playing Earth Day here in New York City. The city pays for that.
Right.
So I'm trying to so maybe April 26th. But we're
Okay.
definitely playing the Biddlestiff Circus Variety Show because they love what we do too because they give us a big ring. They're packed,
Oh,
and Tilted Axe isn't all ages show in that there's layers there. So I always say little kids can like it, but we're not juvenile, and old folks like it, but we're not geriatric. But because it's pretty much instrumental music, that's always interesting and moving.
I would love to see that. Is that so? That's the 26th then, right? You say?
Well, we have to if well, I'm trying to say, do we have it or not? We're just all trying to get gigs,
Well,
but
let me
that would
know for
be
sure because I
yeah,
would
that'd
love
be
to
April
go.
26th, and then the Bindlestiff on May 6th,
Okay.
then the Lower East Side Festival of the Arts on Memorial Day weekend, which comes early this year, sort of like at
Okay.
the end of the third week in May, and then we have of course, our place of origin, Make Music New York, that always has their event on the summer solstice. And we did one
Okay.
last year, and that's where we got that wonderful write-up in the New Yorker from.
Okay.
But it was hot, so I want to. I've really been enjoying playing. Well, I won't say malls, but mall-like places where we can move around inside. That's why museums are awesome. We play the Henry Ford Museum in Detroit, which is a fantastic place. And we've played the City Core Center here last December because you move
Hmm.
around. And so, like, if we can find a place like that for June, we just started planning now. I'd like to do something, but we were roasting outside last year, and
I
so
can imagine. Now, have you ever played an art gallery opening, like one of those big
yeah,
art
yeah.
galleries in
Well,
New York?
that all goes back to that John Cage and Phil Glass stuff when I very first moved here. When
Hmm.
I first started doing the Strange Music concerts, that was produced by Strange Music. It was called 1, 2, 3, Go, which because we only could have a soloist, a duo, or a trio because these were tiny art galleries in Soho.
Hmm.
So yeah, we had 3 seasons of that.
That must have been
I
really
still have the
fun.
program for that. They have probably a lot of names you might know that. And one of my mentors played on one too. David Borden from Mother
Oh
Mallard's
yeah,
Portable Master. Yes,
right. I know him.
yeah. I was. He helped me get a be composer in residence for a year at Cornell one year
Oh boy. Okay.
because of my combination of gamelan and electronics.
Hmm. Boy,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
something.
yeah. But he
So,
played on the program and a lot of other folks too.
well, Patrick, you've been so busy. It's so great to see somebody still making a living, playing music.
Well, if people know me, what I'm supposed to say right now is like, oh yeah, well, any jackass could be busy.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
I'm trying to be productive. No, I'm not.
You are productive. I mean, that's why I have you on this YouTube channel and its series because you're the type of people I want to speak to. You
Well,
know,
it's community building, and since you've reached out, I've been listening to a lot of your other shows. Like, oh, I always
thank
heard of
you.
this guy, heard about this guy, but now I can hear him talk about his music stuff. So, thank you for being such a great
Uh,
resource for keeping the music of vibrant and alive for so many.
yes, and that's my goal here. To talk to everybody and get their story and I'm learning so much that I didn't know about that person that in their past what they did. So I wanted to ask you before we go, what do you think the future is to music now with all this modern technology and computers and AI and where do you think we're headed?
Oh, and
It's a loaded
it's all
question, I
it's
know.
all part of the world in general. No, I'm laughing because I thought like I bet you I haven't met Dennis yet, but he's probably gonna ask me a question about where do I see the future of music going. Um, Um, I I'm not afraid of AI, you know. I've always felt like because I'm a person who've always made things,
Okay.
you know. My computer's on. Um, and my advantage will always be, hey computer,
Hmm.
what am I thinking now?
No, I think about it. Right. Right.
And until I can come back with an answer for that, we'll be fine.
Yeah. But I'm still
I,
kind of,
I took a class with Brian Eno. He had a wonderful songwriting class. It was huge, but to have time with him, and his attitude was like, oh, he's actually very interested in AI and how it can be used for good things. And he says about himself, I would love to go and ask AI what it is I'm doing.
um, I'm,
Maybe you can show me a pattern that I'm unaware of or something like
well, it's
that.
advancing so fast. I mean, every month, not even years, it's just every month you hear about a new tool or something new. It's just phenomenal how quickly we're advancing.
But now my grim side, you know, I'm also grateful for being born when I was, but I think
Same here.
I'll be dying about the right time.
I was very lucky to be around during that period. It was really exciting. And people went out. They only had records. They had cassettes even starting, and then they had the radio. So it was really quite a period, and in New York especially. So you were a great idea for you coming here to New York City.
Yeah, well, they always said if you really want a career in music, you go to either Los Angeles, Memphis, or New York.
Yeah.
This is way before Seattle and other places like that, was a thing. So, but I've always had always wanted to be a city person, and New York was always attractive to me. And now that I've been here so long, I don't think I can really, go out anywhere else. I wonder if you can see out my window.
Yep. Oh yeah. Look at that. Yep.
That's the
Yep. New York.
that's the UN down
Oh, it
there.
is. Oh, okay. There it
Yes,
is. Oh, that's
there you
really
go.
close. You could
Yeah,
be a
yeah.
dip. You could be a diplomat for all we know, right?
Well,
I'm kidding.
I'll try. I'll try.
So anyway,
Um,
Patrick, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for doing this,
yeah.
and good luck in the coming year with more music. And we could check you on your website. Is that the main site for all your current news? Is that the
Yeah.
best way to?
Yeah, it will be revamped for our next season, but right now you can still go to tiltedaxes.com or patrickgrant.com,
Okay.
and you can jump off to Instagram and other places easily from that splash page.
And include the Willie channel and your wife's channel because I like to promote everybody. I'm not playing a game where I don't want to know about other people's what they're doing.
I do the same thing.
I'm not in it for that kind of stuff.
I started out building a community. Tilted Axe is a great place. Now I've gotten to the point with the project. I'm having people who play in the group also have an opportunity to compose for the group. Now that they know it's a special kind of writing that works, for
Okay.
it. And so then I like the fact that I'm making that happen. And Tilted Axe is also a great project because maybe there's, I'm not like a guitar guy. I'm a musician who also plays guitar, but we do have these people from all different backgrounds that probably never would have been playing music together except for, interest in doing something different, you know.
Yeah. Well, that's
So
what's good. That's what makes it happen, and you're one of them. So thank you again, and keep in touch here, and maybe I'll see you on one of your shows. Hopefully.
looking forward. Thank you, Dennis.
Take care, Patrick. Thanks for doing this. Bye bye.